Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News with Big Hairy me. Chewy is a little under the weather. Chewy is unlikely to be with us tonight. You never know. You guys know how we roll. He might just stick his head in at some stage and have a bit of a chat. But he gave me some details of things that were happening to his body which didn't sound that attractive. And I've just told him to do what he thinks is right and chill if he needs to chill. So we probably won't see Chewy tonight, but we do have a guest coming up very, very shortly live that you guys can interact with and ask questions of. And then I've got a couple of stories to play out through the night. We are looking at Winston Peters. We are looking at what Damian Grant said on Bomber's show last night. And if we get time, we're going to have a look at the debacle in the US. That is Jim Jordan and the GOP trying to elect a speaker. They're the things on the table for tonight. And of course, interactions and commentary from you. You're more than welcome anytime to put a comment up. I will do my best to get to it. You'll know if you're a regular viewer that when there's two of us here, one kind of watches the text while the other one's doing, or the chat while the other one's doing things. So it's a bit harder for me to see and keep on top of it, but I'll do my best to keep you guys up to date with what's going on. And obviously super chats are welcome. They're much easier for us to see. Not that it's a criteria, but just letting you know that they're much easier to see and much easier to feel. And yes, lots of people in the chat already sending out vibes to Chewy. Before we get our guest on to have a chat to, I want to remind you that we're running a special at the moment in our merch store, bhnshop.nz. This is a suggestion from the audience that we run bottom feeder, hoodies, and t-shirts, and we have them in three colors. We have them in a tan. That's the tan color there. There's a more accurate representation of it. If you click on it, you can see the exact coloring that the tan is. There is a rust, and that's the rust color coming up there, and there is a black as well. And of course with the BHN logo on the front and on the back, and also we have general BHN merch as well. If you want to be a part of that, that helps us heaps. That helps us pay the bills, keep the lights on, do this, that, and the other. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, because a few people asked once before, if you have a look on the front page here, how it works, we say that we do an order every Friday, and whatever gets ordered by Thursday night gets put in for that Friday, and you get it the following week. And what we've put on there now is also a sizing chart. So if you want to be a bit more accurate with your sizing, you can get one of your t-shirts or hoodies out, and you can measure it up, and you can see what the sizings are, and it all works very, very well. So bhnshop.nz for that. And we thank you for your participation in, I guess, helping us stay afloat. All right, team. We are going to talk tonight about the, I don't even know how to really set it up. Maybe I shouldn't set it up, but I'm going to say the situation in Gaza. It's not really the situation in Gaza. It's a bit of I don't want to sound flippant at all. It was sort of prompted by the stories this morning. The first reports coming up this morning was that Israel has bombed a hospital in Gaza. Now, there are also some groups who are countering that position and saying it didn't happen that way, that it was rockets from Hamas that misfired. And we've already seen, you probably have as well, a whole bunch of mis and disinformation going around, people showing videos of rockets doubling back on themselves, which are actually rockets from something that happened 10 years ago. That's all out there. I think you guys know me, and this will annoy some of you in my audience when I say this. Until we know 100% what's going on, we'll probably use the word allegedly or whatever. But it seems that most places that maybe aren't the IDF or Hamas, like for example Reuters, CNN, are saying that Israel has bombed a hospital in Gaza, yet they're also in all of the stories reporting that Israel is rejecting that notion, saying it was a misfire from Hamas. We're not sure how to approach that really. What the truth amongst all of that is, we'll wait and see. But for now, what I want to do is welcome Marilyn Garson to the show. She is from Alternative Jewish Voices. We want to talk about this, and also Marilyn's got a really interesting story about living in the region. So Marilyn, kia ora, welcome to the show. Thank you for being a part of us tonight.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now I just kind of did a bit of a fumbly setup there. You're, as the guest, you're welcome to have your own view and opinion on that if you want to share anything. We're kind of, and I'm probably someone who's a little bit more cautious before making an absolute statement. As I said, it kind of looks like, feels like, smells like sort of a bomb from Israel, but Israel's saying no, and we haven't had any independent group come out saying absolutely this is what happens yet. So we can talk about that. I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to get your views on that, but also there is so much more going on about the conflict in the area, and there is so much more going on about the people in the area and how they're being treated even without that event. I think we can talk through as much as you're able to and want to talk through with us. But specifically, do you want to speak to that event at all to start with?
I have heard the IDF suggest that Islamic Jihad misfired somehow. When I hear that story in its particulars, it doesn't sound credible to me. It assumes that Islamic Jihad had weapons of this caliber, that they haven't used them, and now they've decided to use them against their own people. We know that Israel has required half of the Gaza population to move, and a forcible transfer of a civilian population is a war crime. They have repeatedly said, if you don't move or whatever you do, we're going to start bombing. A couple of hours before this happened, Netanyahu said the entire responsibility for civilian safety is on Hamas, which of course Netanyahu doesn't get to say, and it's not accurate. And then a hospital is hit. I don't find it credible that this would be the moment of a misfire. So
I think from what I've read and looked at today, I'm in the same camp as you. I don't find it credible, but I guess I'm not a journalist, but my journalistic background kind of goes until we have, you see the person stab the person with a knife, but the court still says allegedly. That's sort of the approach I take from it. Because the thing that I've seen today, and it has been from some commentators in America who have a military background, is Hamas didn't have the level of weaponry to cause that kind of damage, which is what you're saying. So I'm on the same page as you. I guess I'm just also going, we'll still see it pan out for the final part of it. But also the events that led to this are less questionable anyway. So sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying?
What's most important to me about what happened this morning is that it's a further deterioration of intolerable human suffering and collective punishment of the people in Gaza. And I think really that's the place to focus. What is happening to Gazans, and why are we doing nothing about it? Why is the first act of this incoming government, the election is over, here's this nightmare, and their response is nothing? I mean, those are, to me, the bigger questions.
Well, it could be something to do with the incoming Prime Minister's evangelical Christian background. It could be a part to do with it, and his cabinet as well. Many in his cabinet. Can we also address the situation? Now, I'm not trying to oversimplify things in an area where simplification is probably the worst tool to use, because this is a very complex issue that we can't sort out in a 10 to 15 minute conversation. But just so you know, and I've already said this to you when we talked this afternoon, but others know, me, and I think Chewy's on the same page as me, but I'll just speak for me because Chewy's not here tonight. Our heart is with the Palestinian people. What they've been put through, how they've been crushed into a corner of the world, but literally behind walls, without food, without power. But we also vehemently reject the actions of Hamas, for example, going into a music festival and slaughtering and killing, 18 to 22-year-olds. How do we hold both those positions and not get caught out by either side saying, Israel brought it on themselves and Hamas just responded, or vice versa? Hamas and the people of Palestine brought it on themselves and Israel's just retaliating? Because to me, there seems more nuance in that.
I think it's a matter of where you set the frame. But clearly history did not begin last week.
Yeah.
So There's been an occupation for 75 years. There's been a blockade of Gaza for 17 years. There is this year escalating violence on the part of settlers backed by the Israeli army. You can call all of that provocation without excusing the attack and the abuse on civilians. So I would say, if you hide people behind a wall for 17 years, they're going to come out. Something was going to happen at some point. No one outside of military intelligence could have guessed what. What happened in Israel included war crimes, and provocation does not justify or excuse war crimes. And then what Hamas did may have triggered, but neither justifies nor excuses the overwhelming and ongoing crimes in Gaza, which we must stop. That's how I hold it in my hands. There are two tasks that need doing immediately. One is a ceasefire and the restoration of humanitarian aid. And two is somehow to address the causes and work toward a solution. This cannot be just one more round of violence. And at some point, for God's sakes, let the people who have committed crimes, people who acted, people who set the orders of battle, let them go to an international court.
Do you think in that future international court there will be people from Hamas and from Israel both being tried for war crimes?
I'm not a judge of this, and I'm not a war crimes lawyer. But we do know that to attack civilians intentionally is a crime. To kill and kidnap civilians is a crime. We also know that 2.3 million people in Gaza are held behind a wall. They are being collectively punished. Attacks are targeting residential buildings, and now there is this forcible transfer of the civilian population. Those all seem like crimes. Some of them are vast, and some of them are smaller.
Yeah, I mean, I guess thank you for that answer. I guess my position, being far more ignorant than yourself and others in this, is that it appears to me war crimes are being attributed to both sides and committed by both sides. You know, if the incursion into the music festival was a military action by the government of Gaza, Hamas, if it was, then that's a war crime. But I wanted to say as well, sorry, do you want to respond?
I agree with that. And I think there are decades of crimes that need investigation, you know, and until this round of violence, not counting this round of violence, the casualties in this situation, in this occupation, have been roughly 20 to 1. 20 Palestinians died for 1 Israeli. So there really is a need for some perspective. Where are the preponderance of crimes? Where should the preponderance of our urgent attention go? The people of Gaza can still be saved. Yeah,
and within a setting of violence, be it a war or an interaction, there is rules, and crazy word to use, around a proportionate response. And you can't sit on, this is why I think there has to be some kind of cognitive dissonance going on for people supporting Israel wholeheartedly, because they go, you know, innocent people were killed at the music festival or in the houses or incursions into there, so Israel can do whatever they want, as Israel's killing innocent people in buildings by pancaking them. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's why I have kind of said in a clunky way, there seems to be no good guys here on the ones who are battling, and sort of badness everywhere. Now, the people who aren't battling are the people of Gaza and the people of Israel. I heard someone say today, it was someone, a pro-Israel figure, that, you know, these people voted Hamas in. And for clarity, so people know this, the average age in Gaza at the moment is 19 years old. And the last election was in 2006, I believe, which means that's 14 years ago. That means most of the population in Gaza have never participated in an election. So these people did not vote for this government in Gaza. a generation before them did, yet it seems that many are holding those behind the wall, those in Gaza, the citizens of Gaza, responsible for this by saying, well, you elected them. In fact, that was literally what the person said. You elected them. And that's not the case. Now, you've lived in Gaza for 4 years. Is that correct? Can you speak to that? Can you tell us of your experience?
Well, let me just quickly speak to the election business.
Sure.
Because it seems to me that Israelis voted in Netanyahu, Itamar Ben-Gvir, Smotrich a whole lot more recently. So you have to be very careful what happens with that argument. You voted for them, you're responsible for them.
True.
In Gaza, when I was there was talk of an election, and this is 9 years ago. And the joke was that if they really held elections today, Hamas would win in the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority would win in Gaza, because everywhere throughout Palestine, people were so disgusted and they were ready to say none of the above.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's I lived under Hamas for 4 years, and I have repeatedly written that I have no fondness for them. I regard them as an unfortunate consequence of occupation. Hamas has never made any bones about the fact that their role, they say, is to form a society whose core principle is resistance. And I can understand that perhaps what they have done is the only way to build that society. I don't know if there is a nice way to build that society. But what I do know clearly, and Gazans said it to me over and over, is that Hamas is not Gaza, and Gaza is not Hamas. And it's a deadly shorthand to talk about bombing Hamas. There is no place called Hamas.
Yeah.
There is no distinct guilty place called Hamas. Those bombs land on a crowded, overwhelmingly civilian place called Gaza.
Why did you move there? Why did you live there for 4 years?
I had just finished 5 years of work in Afghanistan. And on the strength of that, I got an unsolicited email, and someone said, would you take this job in Gaza? Because we're having trouble recruiting. It's a long odds position to do job creation behind a blockade. And with a couple of conversations, I said, okay. So I went to Gaza, and I was so overwhelmed by the education I was getting there and the opportunity that I found there to create jobs that I stayed for 4 years.
And tell me your experience. Did you ever get caught up in situations between Israel and Gaza? Were there ever any attacks or any violence while you were there?
I lived there through the wars of 2014 and the 51-day bombardment of the short war of 2014 and the 51-day bombardment of 2014. It was shorter in 2012. Yeah, so I was a part of the UNRWA emergency shelter management team in 2014.
What happens? Like, I'm thinking, because there's such roadblocks to everything getting into Gaza, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. When a building, I don't want to make this sound flippant, but when a building falls, what happens to that space? How do they rebuild? What do they do? Or does that building just never get rebuilt and the population keeps getting squashed tighter and tighter and tighter? Because how do you get the stuff to rebuild it in Gaza?
At the end of 2014, it was a shocking and absolutely physically shocking, paralyzing thing to drive around Gaza and see the millions of tons of rubble of places that had been a familiar landscape. You know, I went to Shujaiya, the homes of 92,000 people were rubble.
Wow.
And people begin to clear the rubble, and they salvage what can be salvaged. And it was a beautiful extension of the Gaza port, which is made from recycled blocks of rubble, still with the rebars sticking out of it. And piece by piece, buildings get rebuilt. And that involves getting concrete, getting everything in through the goods crossings that have now been bombed. And in the wake of every military action, you see the reports about Israel obstructing the import of whatever is needed to rebuild. I don't know how they will face it this time.
Is this bombardment going to be worse? Like we didn't play this clip. Actually, Chewy showed me the clip after we finished, maybe on Monday night, where a reporter, I could probably find it, maybe I'll find it and show it to the audience after we finish speaking, but a reporter was being watched by the Israeli police, and the reporter started screaming at the policeman started screaming at the reporter to tell the truth, and then the policeman got in front of the camera and said, we will raise Gaza to the ground. Like, he stood in front of the camera and screamed it at the camera. Is this worse? Like, is what's going on now going to be worse? And how is this going to play out in your opinion?
It's grossly worse. One of the things that I did in 2014 was to monitor the shelter populations. So I can say that we were receiving around 1,000 people per hour, 24 hours a day. In the opening days here, as far as I could track, the displacement was 2 to 3 times faster. We had an airlift. They face a total blockade now. It's unimaginable, and my imagination has already been through what had been one of the most intensive, protracted bombardments. This is unimaginable, but you've also pointed to a really important thing, and I want to just draw it out a bit.
Please.
To be in Gaza or to be Palestinian now is to stand in front of this genocidal language. In 2014, the Minister of Justice spoke about the little snakes of Gaza and said, you need to bomb the homes where the little snakes will be born. You need to kill the mothers who will give birth to the little snakes. This time, it's not even, there's no attempt to hide it. They're subhuman, they're animals. This is genocidal, dehumanizing language.
Yeah.
It is terrifying to stand in front of that without significant defensive weapons. And you know, you're facing one of the most highly subsidized modern armies in the world, and the permissiveness of Western governments. It's terrifying.
Yeah. What role do you think America should play in this, if any? I mean, they've already obviously got their hands all over it, and there's a lot of people at the moment. In fact, I think I saw, what's his name, Russell Brand, who's gone to the dark side, talking today about, will they trace any of these rockets from Hamas to America and Joe Biden? And I was just thinking, what about, the other rockets from the other side that are made in America and sold to Israel? But, I mean, it always comes across to me as almost an incestuous relationship between A, the evangelical Christian, which is probably the basis of B, the American relationship to Israel as well. Like, I'm not saying you can't have allies, but it seems more than that, incestuous. I've never really understood it.
So, A, you cannot fund this assault and then present yourself as a goodwill broker. And I think that is finally in tatters, if anyone doubted it before.
Right.
I can say that one of the things that we did in 2014, I don't know if anyone has the resources to do it now, is to collect fragments from the buildings, the shelter schools, the buildings that are removed from combat, which were nonetheless bombed. We collected fragments. And that helps to trace the source of the bombs. And I suspect someone will come up with fragments from the hospital this morning and make it clear where those bombs came from.
So that will be probably the proof needed to finalize this, like I was saying before about allegedly, but in a court type situation. That'll be the evidence that's needed.
It's coming, trust me.
Yeah, I think one of the things I saw the IDF saying was that they've got recordings of militants saying that they were firing rockets in that region, and they're going to release the audio soon. And I just thought, well, if you've got the recordings, surely you'd release it immediately. The longer that takes to come out, the more suspicious one should be of that recording.
Yeah. I also think you've pointed to something that we underplay in New Zealand, and that is the extent to which the Zionist voices, even here, are Christian.
Yeah, for sure.
A number of the prominent Zionist organizations and the so-called anti-Semitism and Holocaust organizations are actually Christian organizations. When we went to Parliament to present a petition that was run by Justice for Palestine, a couple of busloads of Christian Zionists arrived to try to disrupt the petition handover. And their overt racism was kind of shocking. Big posters that said Palestinians are not ready for self-determination or self-government. I mean, they are here. It's always wrong to present this as a Palestinian-Jewish issue. It is also wrong to present Zionism as simply a Jewish initiative.
Yeah, and I think that sort of has to be the way in New Zealand, though, doesn't it? Because the Jewish population is very small, like numbers just in the thousands, doesn't it? Of, you know, like if you look at the census.
Yeah, in the last census, I believe there were 7,000 self-declared Jews and 20,000 self-declared Jedi warriors.
So what I hear you saying is we need to get New Zealanders Jedis into this cause. Maybe that'll give a better outcome.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's nice to laugh in this conversation, Marilyn, because to be honest, it's pretty depressing all around, isn't it, for everyone? Do you still have connections and contacts with people in Gaza now? Have you been speaking or communicating with them?
Absolutely. I had a friend who was on that so-called safe corridor from the north to the south when it was bombed. Another Gazan friend who has immigrated to New Zealand has lost, I think, 7 members of her immediate family.
Wow.
Every morning I wake up and I look at the messages and I don't know who's going to be alive and who's not. And that is the experience of every Palestinian in this country now.
Wow. It's terrifying. Where do we go from here, Marilyn? Both in this interview and in the situation, how do we move forward? What do you want to see? What does the world need to see happening next? And we're not going to find a solution, obviously, but what do we do? What's the next move for the world?
We, being the world, also being New Zealand, we need to stop this. The reports from the Israeli Office of the Controller from past wars, they have acknowledged that Israel bombed until the world pressure made them stop. We need to be moving our governments right now to make this stop. And then we need to ensure that this is the last violence. That can only happen when we start to address cause, when we acknowledge that Palestinians have the same rights that we have, including the right to self-determination.
Yeah. So complete ceasefire, both sides, stop now, and then a proper and real negotiation. Do you see any way of moving forward without the Palestinians being given their occupied land back? Like, how does that, because that seems to obviously be the biggest hurdle in this a lot of the time, is it's like, this is our land, no, it's our land, no, it's our land. How does that work? Or from being there, from living there, could the people in Gaza just happily live amongst, Israelis, live in peace? What do you think?
Well, you need to remember that Palestine predates Israel. So the matter of giving back, who has a right to, that is a matter of which dates you choose to acknowledge. The Gazans that I knew went to great lengths to tell their children stories that would spare them bitterness and enmity. They know that I'm a Jew. I mean, can people resolve this kind of rage that exists between them? Yes, I think it takes a few generations, and I think the world needs to make an investment in making that happen. But please don't ask me who should go where, because those are questions for the people who live there.
Yeah.
Is that Palestinians have had no say in it.
Yeah.
Let's just let's require that conversation, that project to happen.
How does that even happen? If you say, what I heard you saying before about the US is they kind of can't be involved in negotiation now because they've been funding so much of the literal explosions. So how does that even work? Does there need to be a Jordan get involved? Does there need to be a third party get involved? Does there need to be the UN get involved? How does that even work?
I'm sure there does need someone to step in between them. There are also projects. For example, there's the One Democratic State campaign. There are a few projects with similar names in Israel where Palestinians and Israelis are sitting around a table and saying, how could we do this? Could we all meet our bottom lines? What would it look like? I encourage those conversations, because those are the conversations that none of the leaders have the courage to hold.
I think the other thing I was just going to mention is, we're talking about the actions of Hamas not necessarily reflecting the people in Gaza who are now suffering. I saw a stat today saying 3 out of 4 Israelis are disgusted by what the Israeli government's doing as well. So it seems like, as is always the case with war, it's the citizens who don't want to be involved and those at the top running the countries who are doing it, saying they're representing their country, and the citizens are like, bro, this ain't us. We're not in this. This isn't us. So I'm not trying to play sort of whataboutism by saying, the Israeli people, but it seems like the Israeli people also don't want a part of this, and obviously as do the people in Gaza as well. So if we took our our perspective from what to do for those people as to how to bring peace to those governments, that might be a better place to start.
I agree with that. I've also seen polls that say confidence in the Israeli government is collapsing. And could it be? I don't know. Let's look at the protests that were happening earlier before this. Yeah. Could it be that enough people in Israel have had a look at the nightmare government that they elected and said, Christ, we've got to pull back from this? Could it be? Maybe that's a piece of the turning point.
Yeah. So maybe there'll be an internal uprising. I mean, I'm not saying the Arab Spring had the best result, a decade later, but, a ground roots, internal citizens of Israel might be the ones to solve this problem by doing something with their government, by moving their government on, by bringing in a more progressive, group that wants to bring peace to the region as opposed to what is there now. Maybe. I don't know.
And by hearing from Jews around the world who say, you've lost the plot.
Well, I'll make sure that Bibi gets this video. I'll send it to him, Marilyn, so he can watch it for himself.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I very much have appreciated talking to you. The chat's been going bananas while we've been chatting. Everyone's enjoyed having you here, and I hope we get to touch base again really, really soon. Just thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
All the best, Marilyn. There you go. Marilyn Garson from, I should probably bring up the site as well so people can check it out for themselves, from the Alternative Jewish Voices. And if you want to check it out for yourself, ajv.org.nz, and you can go in there and have a look at everything they've got to say if you want some more information. Right, there you go. I apologize, chat. I know I told you I wasn't going to be with you for that. I was going to be focusing on our guest, because that's what we do. And yeah, it looks like we're not going to have Chewy tonight. He's not feeling the best, obviously, so we won't worry about that. Let me do this for you as well now. I'm going to show you this video. I actually found it whilst we were talking. I didn't want to play this in front of Marilyn. I'm sure she's seen it anyway. But this is what we're talking about when it comes to you've got a reporter, someone in the press, who is speaking within Israel, looking across to Gaza, and you've got the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, the police, who are watching them. And I'll just play it for you. And I don't do this to necessarily demonize the IDF. I mean, I'm not even going to necessarily get into that debate. But when we talk about what it looks like, what it smells like, what it feels like, and then you put this video onto it, then you'll understand maybe a bit more.
מה אתה מדווח? רגע, אני בשידור. אז מה אם אתה בשידור? מה אתה מדווח? אני בשידור. מה אתה מדווח? לא מעניין אותי אם אתה בשידור. מדווח מה אומר דובר צה"ל. מה אומר דובר צה"ל? מקווה מאוד שאתם אומרים דברים טובים. הבנת אותי? מקווה מאוד שאתם אומרים דברים טובים וכל החמאס האלה צריכים לשחוט אותם. הבנת
Hamas should be
אותי?
slaughtered. Am I clear?
عناصر من الشرطة الإسرائيلية يحاولون
The Israeli
أو
police are
يراقبون ما الذي
monitoring what
نتحدث
we are saying for the people listening on audio. He came to me screaming and threatening me. That's the reporter speaking for those listening to the audio podcast. And then the police officer comes back in front of the screen and says, we'll turn Gaza to dust. We will turn Gaza to dust. That is the response from the IDF. And I know probably many of you have seen that. But, you know, just wanted to share it with you. There's something else I want to get to as well about this subject matter. Very, very interesting, the response that I had. At about 4 hours ago, I put out a tweet that would be speaking to the Alternative Jewish Voices this evening at 9 p.m. And Twitter did some interesting things. Some people who scream free speech from the rooftops did some interesting things. So here's our old mate Karen Plunkett and his Twitter feed. I put out a tweet that said that we'd be talking to the Alternative Jewish Voice, and Sean Plunkett put out a tweet immediately saying, please report this spreading of disinformation by a moron. I don't know who the moron is he's talking about, but Sean Plunkett, the person who screams free speech, free speech, free speech always from the rooftop, he's also in the same camp of people who say, oh, how can you complain about something you've never read? Those people. When I put out there that I was speaking to the IJV tonight, he tweeted out to his 24,000 followers that he wanted them to report my tweet as disinformation. Hadn't heard the interview, doesn't believe about free speech. Because if you believe free speech, why would you want to get it reported? One of the interesting things about this is he got quite a lot of pushback from the people who obviously follow him. I only found this because someone messaged it to me. Israel, this is Ben says, Israel said they hit a hospital with Hamas in it right after the incident happened. Did I miss something? I don't know if that statement is true. I did a bit of looking for that and I couldn't find something. Ben says, where is the disinformation, Sean? It appears to be an Israeli strike. Again, opinion. Are you yelling at a mirror again? Are you for real? Newshub first thing this morning reported that it was an Israeli airstrike and there was 500 plus killed before they could even know in either way. Someone else says, fan of cancel culture. Are you, Sean? Hypocrite. Echo chamber for you. So it was, I find it particular. And then of course, because it's his audience, there had to be, weren't you pro-vaccine pop up in the middle of it all. Disinformation ? Even BBC, CNN and other mainstream media outlets are reporting that Israel did this. So really interesting. And one particular person who doesn't like me said this, a guy called Michael says this, he is a moron, it's me, but it's not disinformation. I thought we all hated censorship here. And I actually I don't normally respond to tweets, I respond to that by saying, careful Michael, you're cottoning on to Karen Plunkett's grift, where he shouts free speech. He's only talking about his own speech and speech he approves of. Michael's response to that was, I haven't liked Plunkett in years, but the last week has shown how many of those champions of free speech, freedom of oppression, are just amoral assholes. Unfortunately, it took a bombing of a hospital by Israel to out them. To be clear, I don't think much of you either. Fair. All's fair. But it was really interesting to look at the response online, just mentioning that the Alternative Jewish Voices were coming on. Those people who scream free speech. I've had a couple of people who are involved with the Free Speech Union. One who's a Jewish person who I know that I've talked about blocking some people in the last few weeks, is one of the people I've blocked. So I'm sure he's going off his nut as well. But if it's free speech, then whether our guest was completely right or wrong, whether our guest was a psyop or a plant or authentic and real, if it's free speech to these people, then it's free speech. But as soon as it's some kind of speech they want to push back against, all of a sudden that free speech that they scream from the rooftops just disappears. Goes bye-bye. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye. All right, we're going to move on. That was a great conversation. I thank you for all the all the chat going on, I can see that's not the case. I'm not going to put your setup, your comment up, Dave 24/7 about my channel. It's not the case, but I think it's a grift. I think that's what it is, and we all know, and you all know. I've told you all the numbers that Plunkett needs to hit to keep his financial side of his business viable, and he's not doing it. I think you'll notice he's gone back towards the anti-vaxxers when they moved away from them for a while, but they moved away from them and they couldn't get the financial gain they needed, so they've moved back towards them to try and grift a little bit more. Yep. Sorry, I'm just reading through some of the chats as I talk to you. Cool. I just think it's interesting that it's as simple as that. If you're a free speech absolutist, which actually I'm not a free speech absolutist. I think there are some tethers. But they all say they are. This is the thing. They say they are. So what are you doing? What are you doing trying to get a tweet of mine reported that I'm going to talk to a group before I talk to a group? You hypocritical little bitch. Right. Let's move on, shall we? Because his name was said 3 times, which means he has shown up in a mirror. It's Mr. Winston Peters, back in Wellington.
Winston Peters returned to Parliament today, hosting his first caucus meeting with a number of new MPs.
But anyone hoping for insights into his possible coalition demands will have been left disappointed. Political editor Jenna Lynch has the latest.
Winston Peters, welcome to Wellington. It's been a while, returning to the capital after 3 years in the political wilderness, greeted by his old foes. Questions.
Now, I've got to be honest with you. What Winston Peters here did to the media, I might be using a little bit of a, I might be exaggerating a bit and being a bit fangirly here. Not that I'm a fan of Winston's, but is a little bit gangster. And I give him some credit for it. The silence, I'm not going to talk to you, just nothing, is a little bit gangster. I like it. Now, I think the very last question he gets asked when he gets into his car kind of goes to show what our media's turned into. And that is, on some level, tabloid journalism. Even our political reporters. You listen carefully. As he gets into the car, one of the reporters yells, "Can't we even get a wave, Mr. Peters?" They want him to get in the car and give a wave. Do you know why they want to do that? Because that's what they want to use in the news. They want to use Mr. Peters waving to the reporters as he's driving off. And when I heard that, the last one, I'm just like, oh, media, you have just showed your whole ass. And I think what Mr. Peters did, ignoring them, because the media has been poor this election cycle. And now they're like going, okay, that's done. Let's move on to the next thing, without taking any responsibility for the poor job they did. And I'm not saying Winston Peters has any morals or ethics or anything like that. But what has happened is he's basically gone, nah, not playing your game today. Now, he's a bit of a master of communication. He will be playing the game at some stage. So I'm not big upping Peters overall, but I did like this one interaction where he just basically went, nah, not talking to you.
Mr. Peters, welcome back. Have you spoken to Christopher Luxon yet?
Upon questions.
What's the most pressing issue for you in the next government?
Upon questions.
What's Christopher Luxon had to say to you?
All left unanswered.
You must be happy to be back in Wellington.
The man with much to say rendered mute.
Any non-negotiables?
Wherever Winston wanders, there's always a perspective from the public.
Give those ACT Party bastards hell.
Now, if you missed that, someone shouted out, "Give those ACT Party bastards hell," from someone at the airport. So, we've talked about how that coalition's going to work.
But even that only drew a wave in the trademark grin.
Have you spoken to National?
No question was worth an answer today.
Are you the next Speaker of the House?
Mustering his voice only for manners.
Thanks, mate. You're welcome.
Before he sped off, bound for his well-trodden turf, getting Peters into the Parliament, a full-scale operation through a little-known entrance. News Hub spotted him, though.
Mr. Peters, have you spoken to Christopher Luxon yet?
So began round 2 of silence.
Why won't you say anything, Mr. Peters?
Returning New Zealand First MP Mark Patterson keeping details tight.
What's the plan for today? Is he meeting with Christopher Luxon?
I don't know.
Down to business inside, but the secrecy strategy was scuppered by a clear glass window. Quickly.
But unfortunately, Mr. Peters went back to his tried and true, because this is a building that they're about to go in, that they're about to meet in, that the press has been allowed to use and access for media scrums, etc., etc., etc. But you'll see in this report what happens. Lloyd Burr, from a tweet from this afternoon, sad day for democracy. Winston's people have had the Bowen Select Committee Room deemed office space, which means we can't film where we've always been able to. So Winston then went back to Winston, not gangster, wankster, maybe, instead, by basically making it harder for the reporters to do their job beyond just shutting up. He put some barriers up. And to be honest, it's a bit what Luxon did yesterday by not letting his MPs talk.
Fixed up with some frosting before a change of location.
So you're not going to tell us what the plan is for the rest of the day?
You don't even know where we're going.
Well, no. Well, we're going to find out if we...
Committee room turned caucus room. More questions shut down by the party president.
Can you just tell us what the process is? That's all we want to know.
No.
Has Winston talked to... Oh, you've just dropped some money. It's quite a sizable piece. Has Winston talked to Chris Luxon yet?
No comment.
Before New Zealand first called for a rule change and our cameras were turfed out of the corridor.
Well, the swipes let us in, and then 5 minutes later they've been swapped. When Fletcher came out and...
It's been changed. Yeah.
Variations of no comment echoed off Wellington buildings all day.
Yeah. How does it feel to be back in Parliament?
Won't say any more for now, thanks.
Do you have any word for the New Zealand public?
Eventually, the team offering up morsels.
You've been waiting, so we thought we'd bring you some afternoon tea.
Is this actually why you've come out?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. The whole thing.
Of kai rather than information.
There's no rhetoric to share, but there's the equivalent of loaves and fishes. Okay, guys?
Thank you very much.
And at the end of the day...
Spoken to National yet? How was your meeting?
The public none the wiser as to Peters' plans. Jenna Lynch, News Hub.
So there you go. So that was Mr. Peters. Now, what I thought I'd show you, I just talked about what the last reporter said when he got into the car. That didn't do it. I'll play you this little 2-minute clip. This is from, I think, One News did this. Yep, this is from One News. 27 questions he ignored going through the airport, and they've listed them. This is just more. We should probably, actually, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll put it on like 1.5 speed. Just because I need to watch the whole thing. 1.5 speed. This is the questions he's being asked, and Winston Peters putting the media in their place.
How are you? How do you feel about having a sort of welcome when you land in Wellington? It's a good feeling.
Peters, how long do you intend to be in Wellington for this trip? What's the most pressing issue for you in the next government? Happy to be back? Possibly back in town? You noticed that I changed the New Zealand safety network. Is there anything you'd like to say, Mr. Peters?
Mr. Peters, is it true that they offered you the role of Speaker?
Would you allow a referendum on treaty?
All right. What's the reason for being a bit silent today?
You must be happy to be back in Wellington.
Do you not want to do anything to show that you're being negotiations?
Any non-negotiables? You get a bag quicker?
Mr. Peters, do you have any thoughts on National delaying the rebuild of Whangarei Hospital?
Where are you going?
Well, is there any chance of a hung parliament?
What's Christopher Luxon have to say to you?
When are you next going to make a statement, Mr. Peters? Are you going to be making a statement at any stage?
Listen out for that last question. Give us a wave. Please, Mr. Peters, give us a wave.
Have you spoken to National?
Do you think Hipkins will stay on for the whole term as leader, Labour Party leader?
Around here, Be the next Speaker of the House? Good day.
Good day.
Can we get a wave?
Can we get a wave? How neutering for the media. I mean, that's the thing, eh? It's neutering. It's like being put in their place. Absolutely 100%. So, I'm just stopping things that are playing. Thank you for the super chat. $5 from Tai Chi and One. Thanks for covering this issue. I'm assuming that came in. Does it have a time on them? Oh, it doesn't have a time on them. Whilst we were talking about Israel and Palestine. Look, I acknowledge that we have not covered that issue enough since it started, but you will forgive us, hopefully, knowing that we are just a little 1.5 man show here. And it was New Zealand's election on Saturday, if you were aware of that, and we spent all of our time focusing on local politics for the last few weeks. So tonight we're already looking at it. I've got a story perhaps on Jim Jordan, although I might put it through till tomorrow because we may run out of time. I'll probably play some of it anyway. The absolute debacle that's happening in America, trying to have the Republicans vote for a Speaker of the House. It's hilarious how bad they are at politics. So funny, eh? So many on the right are bad at politics, but good at grifting. So they get in, and because the left chooses not to vote, they get in. I do want to play one other thing as well, because Damien Grant, a regular co-host on Bomber's podcast, he sort of revealed the secret, I feel, last night. And he said the quiet part out loud. And you know how they often talk about the Māori elite? It's a bullshit phrase, but I think we can talk about the right-wing elite. People like Damian Grant, who in this podcast that I'm going to show you a clip from, was celebrating the millions of dollars he made and the COVID money he took because he was entitled to it. Literally, he's entitled during the COVID lockdown, breakdown, crisis, mandates, all that sort of stuff. So he would be someone who we could call an elite on the right, wealthy, with money, with purpose, with privilege. He said the loud bit, the quiet bit out loud. I don't know if accidentally or not, where he reveals to the people who are on the panel that really what this whole thing is about. Like the whole thing to do with ACT, the whole thing to do with the right getting in, and all of their desires is for cheaper labour. Now, if you're an owner of a dairy, cheaper labour isn't a lot because you're already dealing with perhaps minimum wage. But if you're someone like Damien Grant who wants to hire a lawyer, then you still want cheaper labour, but it's obviously going to be more expensive than minimum wage. Let's just have a bit of a listen to this interaction between Damien Grant and the panel, and then he will reveal the secret as to what this is all about. It's all about being able to pay less for people to work for you.
I think those people on Struggle Street are entitled to free education for their children. They are entitled to free health care. They're entitled to a pension when they hit 65. All of these things, and those are real benefits of real big dollar values. And in terms of the social welfare system that we have in this country, there are very few countries outside of the Nordic region that actually have a more comprehensive social welfare system. So, I mean, if you can't afford accommodation and the state doesn't have a state house, we'll put you in a hotel room. We have a massive social welfare infrastructure. And Chris Luxon's not going to change any of that.
Well, they're going to bring prescription charges, and they're going to stop benefits going up by the CPI, so it drops behind.
They're going to be also pushing the disabled into work. The drag alerts.
But this is at the margin stuff, right?
We care about the people on the margins. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Preach,
Bomber. But the health system is not going to be defunded. The education system is not going to be
David Seymour
defunded.
wants to get rid of 15,000 workers. Now, and they want to abolish the Māori Health Authority. It's barely underway, and it's set up to assist with targeting specifically Māori, who are the most overrepresented in all the worst ways in terms of the health. They want to get rid of that. So, all those workers will be gone. Where do they go before Christmas? What happens to a policy that's probably conservative, a strategy that's conservative, that might move into something a little bit more transformational?
So I mean, this David Seymour's pushback on that would be, we have an additional...
Did you realise that Damien Grant was the voice piece of David Seymour? Maybe you did. Maybe we all did.
I think it's about 15,000 public servants between 2007 and now. What are we getting for that? As taxpayers, what are we getting? So you're right. I mean, I don't think David Seymour will be able to achieve it, because I think Chris Luxon won't want to fire a single person. But what are we... And you're saying get rid of 14,000, 15,000 people. Those people aren't going to disappear. I mean,
they're either going to go on a benefit or what? What happens to them? There's lots of redundancies. I don't know.
I'll tell you what happened. I've got an office in Wellington, and we would like to employ a lawyer. I cannot compete with the wages that the state is paying for lawyers.
With all the money which you've been making
with
through
all of the
COVID.
money that I've been making. What the state is doing is that they are sucking up all of these productive individuals, putting them into the state system, and as consumers of the state and as people on struggle street.
So hang on. We believe in market forces. We believe in people going places where they can get paid what they earn. And then all the people who adhere to that sort of neoliberal idea are like, well, we can't afford them anymore. We can't afford them anymore. So we have to make sure that those opportunities get taken away from them so I can pay less for them, even if he is talking about a fucking lawyer.
You're not getting any benefit from that. The healthcare isn't getting better. The education system isn't getting better. We're not deriving any benefit from that, but we are paying for all of those additional people.
So this is about getting cheaper staff members.
And so if we say to that person, you're currently working for this government department, and the people you're working for are deriving no benefit, we're going to take you out of there. That person's going to have skills and they're going to have ability and they're going
It's
to
very
work.
hard for me to be sympathetic about any of this, but
those people are going to go to a private sector firm. That the only way that private sector firm is in order for them to pay the wages, they're going to need to deliver a good or a service that somebody wants to buy.
It's as venal as like you all thought it was.
100%. So there you go. Damien Grant has just confirmed it all for you. Everything that was about. ACT getting rid of 15,000 people. It's all about just paying people less, freezing of the minimum wage for 3 years, setting the minimum wage to inflation when they're promising to get inflation down to 1 or 2%. It's all about just paying people less, whether you're a dairy worker or a fucking lawyer. They just want to pay you less no matter what. Damien Grant can't afford lawyers. My understanding is he's had quite a few lawyers in his time, but he now can't afford lawyers. So he wants the government to step in and make lawyers be able to be paid less by getting them fired out of the system that they are in at the moment. When you say the quiet part out loud, that's what it's about. That's what it's about. What time are we at? Oh, look, we're just before 10 o'clock. We can do this. Let's do a full story for you. Is there anything in the chat that I need to look at? You guys are just talking to each other. You're beautiful people, aren't you? Felix says, I don't know how Bomber can put up with them. Look, but Bomber's credit, they're mates as well. I mean, I think the thing, hopefully most of us in life, I like Ricky, Moana's is so telling. I hope in life we can be friends with people who are on the other side of the aisle. Is it possible? I guess, I think I've actually read on Bomber's blog in the last wee while how he has been vehemently disagrees with stuff that Damien's been writing, but they seem to have a friendship that they're able to, that's business, and then they have their friendship. So I guess that's how I do it. Yep, lots of stuff there. Hey, this is not going to be a long one, but there's a clip I'm going to play you after this that basically shows you what the Republicans are doing at the moment to try and, believe it or not, blame the Democrats for what they're not able to do at the moment. I'm sure most of you have heard, there's a bit of a synopsis as to what's happening in America with the GOP at the moment, how they're not able to elect themselves a speaker. Let's have a look at the story.
At least for right now. Just about an hour ago, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan failed.
So for people who aren't aware, because I don't think it says it in the story, the Republicans can lose about 3 votes of all of their votes. And they need about 216, 217 votes. So they've got about 220 in there. So they can lose 3 and still get through. And I believe 8 Republicans didn't vote for Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is the Trumpian mouthpiece. And some of those Republicans are basically saying, we will not vote for him until he acknowledges that Trump lost the election, which of course he can't do because that's why he got elected. You've also got a situation where a bunch of Republicans are now having to figure out, they've got this dilemma. I'll just come back and have a chat. Here I come. Hi. Bunch of Republicans have this dilemma because there's several Republicans, 20 or so, who are in Biden districts. So they've won their local area, but all around them are Democrats, and the state is Democrat. And they've got a problem that if they put Jim Jordan in, they risk losing the vote from the people who put them in there, because there may be lots of Democrats who have voted for them in their area because they think they're a good person, they're a good congressman, right? But then if they don't vote for Jim Jordan, then because the Republican Party is such a cult at the moment, they may get primaried. And that simply means for newbies that you have to sort of apply to be the representative of the political party. And if someone wants to challenge you, they can. So therefore, these people who are in Biden districts sort of can't vote for Jim Jordan, the Trumpian candidate, or else they may lose the election because any moderates or any Democrats that may have voted for them then may not. But they also have to vote for Jim Jordan, because if they don't, the Republican Party might put other people up in front of them to primary them and actually take their seat off them for the people to then vote for. And this is the situation that the Republicans have put themselves in. Let's have a look at a bit of a breakdown of the story. It's just 2 minutes.
Failed to get enough support in the first round of voting. Skylar Henry has a look at what is happening next.
Of which the Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 200 votes.
A still divided House failed to turn up enough votes in the first round to name Ohio Republican Jim Jordan as Speaker, despite an enthusiastic nomination.
I rise today to nominate the gentleman from Ohio, Jim Jordan, as Speaker of the People's House.
Democrats countered with their own nominee, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and pointed to Jordan's record.
This body is debating elevating a Speaker nominee who has not passed a single bill in 16 years.
But Jordan isn't giving up. He headed into today's vote with confidence.
Will you be Speaker by the end of the day?
I hope so. Some in the GOP are still sore over ex-Speaker Kevin McCarthy's ouster and feel this is a case of the tail wagging the dog.
We've had a minority of the majority.
It's a very interesting thing to think about, the tail wagging the dog, and have a listen to what this gentleman has to say and think about New Zealand politics at the moment, especially with ACT.
Wagging the dog.
We've had a minority of the majority dictate all of this, and it's unacceptable.
A House without a Speaker can't get much of anything done, and the seat is vacant as war escalates in the Middle East, and an election year looms large here in the U.S.
If he's going to lead this conference during a presidential election cycle, and particularly a presidential election year with primaries and caucuses around the country, is going to have to be strong and say Donald Trump didn't win the election, and we need to move forward.
Jordan was asked about those election-denying concerns this morning.
I've been very clear about that. There were states who unconstitutionally changed their election law, and that's what I objected to.
Jordan wouldn't say how many rounds he's willing to go to clinch 217 votes. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
And the one other thing I wanted to show you tonight, guys, was this is actually from Brian Tyler Cohen's channel. It's just the first couple of minutes of conversation. So this is Kevin McCarthy, GOP congressman, and he this is beautiful, and this says everything there is for you to know about the GOP. So as I spelled out to you, they needed about 217, something like that. It's around that number, and they've got about 220 in the House. 8 Republicans voted against Jim Jordan, so they couldn't get that number. So that's down to like 211, 212, something in that vicinity. And Kevin McCarthy does his utmost, no matter how much he's asked, even by the guy on Fox News, their friendly channel, even by Fox News, he tries to sell this narrative that it's the Democrats' fault. The Democrats' fault for not voting Jim Jordan in. It's witchcraft almost. And even Fox News doesn't fall for it. Have a look. You'll love this.
The interesting part of why we're here, every single Democrat voted to stop one branch of government. They created this mess with 8 Republicans. Every single Democrat did it. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go sit down. We'll talk to those that have difference of opinion and come back.
Did the margin surprise you?
So that's every single Democrat who said it once.
Do you feel bad right now for Mr. Jordan? You threw your support for him. Do you feel bad for him?
No. Don't over read into this. This is about the same vote I had on my first vote out. Why we're in the no. Let's go back to how it got here. We wouldn't be here if every single Democrat didn't vote with 8 Republicans to shut this place down. That's it. No,
Republicans voted against Jim Jordan today on the floor, including 2 votes from somebody who's not even a member anymore.
Every single Democrat and 8 Republicans voted to shut down one branch of government. That is why we're here today. There's no other reason why we're here today but because of that. Now we had a vote on the floor. It didn't get to the whole point. Now we'll take a break, talk to people, and come back and solve it.
So how long? Is this going to be today?
Utterly beautiful. So even the guy from Fox News, who's that reporter there, was like, yeah, this doesn't sound quite right to me. Yeah, and it's not remotely the responsibility, obviously. That'd be like you know, the National Party bringing up an act here in New Zealand, an ACT party bringing up legislation, better than saying ACT because it gets confusing, bringing up legislation in New Zealand, and the ACT party in New Zealand first voting against it, and then Labour and the Greens and the Māori Party voting it. And that'd be like someone coming out and say, well, if Labour hadn't voted against it, it would have got through. If Labour hadn't voted against it, it would have got through. It's like, it's not their job. It's not their job, and it never happens. It never happens at the other side, put the speaker in. So it's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Drinking tears. Hey, thanks for being with me tonight, guys. Lots of ways you can support us. One of the really important ways is to check out our audio podcast. And that very simply is by going on to Apple Podcasts and searching hashtag BHN or Big Hairy News. We like to stay in that top 5 in our charts. We're the news commentary charts. And you guys listening to it is a way that we can do that. I also take clips from what we've been doing. Often they're the same audio clips as I make YouTube clips. And I put them on there as well, normally a couple of days after the show. Because then if you've missed, say, Monday's show, then tomorrow or today there may be a clip that's popped up from Monday's show that you can catch up on without listening to the whole show. Although, why wouldn't you want to listen to the whole show? So if you haven't subscribed to our daily audio podcast, it is daily. There are podcasts that go up there every single day of the week because I put some clips up in the weekend as well. Then a subscription would be appreciated, hashtag BHN. Also, while we're in it, if you are watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you know when we're going to be on. It's a great idea because it also means when we end up doing some things that are a bit off the cuff and getting out of, like we did on Saturday in the middle of the day, we did an AMA and Ask Us Anything because we wanted to test the system was working. But people who have got a notification bell rung, they would have known we were on, and we had a nice little audience of people asking us questions. So subscribing to all of those things is good. And if you do subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, something that would be really, really useful is a rate and a review. Because the more reviews we get, the more rates we get, it helps us in the algorithm for other people to find us as well. Because the Apple algorithms go, oh, this is an interesting situation here. Look what they're doing. They're do this little thing, these little digital numbers that don't say anything other numbers is getting a bit of attention. Maybe we should show some other people about it. The same for YouTube as well, actually. Yeah, so that'd be great if you wanted to do that. The other thing you can do at the moment, of course, is we've got our merch drop going on. Very simple. bhnshop.nz. We've got our general merch. If you're more about just wanting to get some BHN merch, there are our hoodies and there are our T-shirts in there as well. We'll only have, we kind of do a couple of weeks every month. I think these are going to be up there for 3 weeks and then we take them down. If you notice on the hoodies and T-shirts, there's an OB on the back. The reason it would be great to get one of these earlier and sooner rather than later is the OB means original beardy. It kind of comes from the idea of OG being an original gangster, basically meaning we'll be taking that OB off in 2024. So it won't be there. It's only going to be there for 2023, which means your merch will be able to be identified as something that you got when we started off. Like if we were here in 5 years' time and we were still doing this, there'd be people who have OB gear that no one else will have, because only in 2023 will people be able to get original beardy gear. So you are like an original beardy on board with us nice and early, and that is on both the T-shirts and also the hoodies. You can see there on the black one. And our kind of our thematic merch this week, our bottom feeder T-shirts and hoodies, they're all there as well. Yeah, we'll be doing an order tomorrow night, so you're welcome to grab one, and we'll get them sent out to you next week. Someone is due, surname is Carr, I believe, a hoodie, and that's going to be coming out for the end of the week for you as well if you are watching. Still waiting on a hoodie because they didn't come in the last round. They've just come in shortly. They'll be getting sent out this week to you. Other than that, remember tomorrow night we're thinking about doing a bit of a Discord show. I'd like to introduce the Discord more to the Thursday night show. So if you want to get involved in sort of call in and putting it back to you guys to have a bit of a chat about what's going on, I'd love to do that. It would be great fun. It won't be the whole show, but it will be a portion of the show tomorrow night. So we'll do a couple of stories. We may or may not have Chewy back with us. We'll see what happens, see how he's feeling. But what we'll do is fire up the Discord and give you a chance to share your views on any of the stories you've got going on at the moment, or anything you actually want to talk about as well. And can I just also say, speaking of support and stuff, huge thanks to Caleb. Caleb, you're very generous. Caleb has given us a $20 super chat. It's like everyone expects the left to be reasonable adults, yet gives the right a free pass to be unhinged. That's quite polite, Caleb. I thought you were going to say assholes. Yes, I think that's probably true. No, maybe not. You know, there's some pretty wacky kind of far lefties who I kind of love. I love their passion, but one could say there's some people out there who have some juvenile attitudes around them as well. But thank you, Caleb. You're being very generous. So you don't need to do it every single night. We do appreciate it because it does genuinely help. But thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe don't do it tomorrow night, Caleb, but get yourself a hoodie or a t-shirt or something like that. It'll be the same sort of thing. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate all the help that you guys have given us. I think that's us. For tonight, team. Anything in there? Oh, Felix. Is that right? Oh, Felix says that her t-shirt doesn't have an OB. We might have to do something to rectify that then, should we? Because it should do. John Stewart would make a great president. Just says thanks, Pat. Thank you too. Thank you for being a part of it. Lots of people are talking about it. So I'm just checking out the chat now. John Stewart would run for president. Why would he though? He's worth $100 million and he gets to do what he wants when he wants. Why would you do it? Yeah. All right. Too many people. You're all beautiful. All right, guys. We'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. Either me and Nala. Nala, do you want to come back tomorrow night? Hey. She's asleep. Or me and Chewy. I will, Felix. I can see what you're saying. I'll check out Discord. Everyone needs to check out Discord because Felix has done a shirt. Everyone should go and check it out. And we will... Yeah, people are talking about the interview. Gareth there in the interview says, enjoy the interview. Good. Share that around. You know, as much as people were complaining about the interview before it even happened, which I showed you, you guys know me. You know I'm fairly balanced. You know where my heart is. And as I've always said, the heart is certainly with the Palestinians and the people in Gaza. But I'm not going to turn a blind eye. In fact, the irony is it's the other side who seems to turn the blind eye. You know, Israel can do whatever it wants and we'll just support them. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to what I think is pretty clearly war crimes committed by both sides. So I'll do that as a clip tomorrow and maybe even some shorter version clips. Share them around, tell people about it. And other than that, we'll catch you tomorrow night from, let's say 9 p.m, just for a change, for another edition of Big Hero News. Thank you, my friends. Catch you tomorrow. Chewy, if you're watching, get well. Hooroo.